Hey guys, welcome to this incredibly freaking chilly morning in Tasmania. Just had to start the forge early today. It is so cold, just so I can get a bit of warmth. Anyway, as you can probably tell from the title of this video, I want to talk about a topic which is fairly controversial, simply because everybody has an opinion on it. And really, who am I to turn down such an amazing chapter of putting my aura in where it probably shouldn't be. However, the topic of how to price your work as a blacksmith, or in any field really, has been covered so extensively before, including by two of my favorite YouTubers. Dan Moss did a video on running a blacksmithing business from his perspective in the UK, and Roy Adams at Christ Standard Ironworks has done a video from the perspective of the United States. So why not complete the trifecta with a perspective from Australia? Now, I'm going to do a little bit of a disclaimer at the start of this video, since this is a controversial topic. I'm not saying that Roy's wrong, I'm not saying that Dan's wrong. What I'm doing by putting this video out there is giving you a different perspective than probably what you have ever heard before on pricing your work. And this doesn't just apply to blacksmithing, it applies to everything. Now, the reason why my opinion on it is so different has a little bit of a backstory, which I'll try and give you the cut down version of, because it is long and nobody wants to hear the whole thing. Before I was the blacksmith you know and love, I worked in a field called behavioral game theory, which is a field that is very rare, not many people do it, and I was one of the very few people in my country who did it. And behavioral game theory, it's sort of like combining psychology and mathematics. And you build mathematical models that both predict and explain human behavior in any given environment. I'd be called into businesses where the staff weren't getting along properly. And I would explain using predictable and repeatable math why. And they would be able to trial run different initiatives to get them working together better by plugging values into a formula and seeing what came out the other side and seeing if it was desirable or not. A lot of what I did was marketing, using game theory to predict the movements of customers and the behaviors of customers, and to highlight ways to get a better outcome from the end formula. It's a controversial field because a lot of people don't like admitting that human behavior is predictable, especially predictable enough that you can write a mathematical formula for it. However, it's very accurate, it's very repeatable, and I was very good at my job. I've sort of burnt out on it because seeing that side of the world is hard, and so I left it in the end. But just to let you know, this is actually a professional opinion on pricing your work as a blacksmith or in any field. Not just me winging my opinion around there. Not to say other people's ideas on it are wrong. Figured I'd just give you another perspective, which I guarantee you've never heard before. So, pricing your work, a lot of people say there's a lot of factors around it, and it's why the videos tend to be so long. You know, there's trying to find out a good hourly rate for yourself. There's trying to factor in your business overheads, keeping all that in mind. Fuel costs for getting around places if you're doing deliveries and that sort of thing. However, what it comes down to is actually much, much simpler than that. Because when you're running a blacksmith forge, you're not keeping staff. You're not keeping a level of books that you would if you were running, say, an accounting firm or a grocery store or a large business that has employees, paid sick leave, benefits, dental, etc. You're not covering all of that. You're just running a small smithy, because let's face it, there's no such thing as a large-scale blacksmith anymore. This is trying to be an artist for a living, essentially. There's only one factor that you actually need to consider, and that is, what will people pay for your work? So, to talk about that in more detail, let's take the hourly rate, for example. Now, minimum wage here in Australia is something like $17 an hour or something like that, I think, for somebody that's, 20 to 35. And let's just say, if I want to make an S-hook, I can knock one of those out in 15 minutes. somebody else that's the same age as me, that may have even been blacksmithing as long as I have been blacksmithing for, may take an hour to do it. So should the person who has spent longer on it be paid more for their work? And now, that argument can be made that you've got to work out what is the realistic hourly rate for you yourself. However, if you are particularly slow at blacksmithing, that you have no doubt passionate about the craft, should you work for $2 an hour when you are doing your work? Well, if you would say yes to that, then really what you're saying is that it comes down to what you can actually get for the product, which is the main argument that I'm trying to make here. So Roy Adams actually made a very fantastic point in his video about drawing tapers, is that we are not, as blacksmiths, measured by the process that goes into the making of our work. We are measured as blacksmiths by the work, the end result. The customer does not care how long it took. The customer does not care what went into making it. They judge that it was handmade and that it looks a particular way and feels a particular way. So another argument that I hear is, you've got to take into account your overheads, your expenditures, which is a valid argument. The steel that you're buying needs to be taken into account. The fuel for your forge, I hear, needs to be taken in, whether it's gas or, in my case, charcoal. Now, here's the counter argument to that. You are blacksmithing and trying to make a living off of it, presumably because you love it. This is not a field that you go into because you think, hey, I'm going to get rich doing this. You go into it because you love it. So if you're including your fuel costs in the price of the work that you sell, are you saying that you would not have been in the forge if you didn't have that order to make that item? I would say that you would still be in the forge. You would be burning the fuel anyway. So if you're going to go down that path, that rabbit hole can get pretty deep. What about charging them, including the price of the food that you ate that day? What about the clothes that you bought that you are wearing this apron? Should I charge for that as well? Because it's being used while I make this item. You could go on and on and on about that. Really, an actual overhead is something that would not have taken place. That expenditure would not have taken place if it were not for the order that was done. If you have a restaurant that has 5 cooks in the kitchen, are they going to keep them on for an entire night if nobody turns up to the restaurant? No. If they do, then they have no right to complain about their expenditures. It's the same with blacksmithing. If you are going to be in the forge anyway, you should not be whacking on the price of your fuel into the item that was sold. Now, that's going to be a controversial topic, because you're going to think, well, I need to include it because they are paying for that coal it went into, or that gas because it went into the item. Yes, but the whole notion of game theory is to simplify, to break down. And when I say simplify, I mean get rid of all of the extra thinking, because you could go down a very deep rabbit hole and start including all manner of different things. You can get into long arguments about the hourly rate, the time it should take to make something, whether or not you should charge this or whether or not you should charge for that. Really, what it comes down to is simply this. What can you sell the item for? So, an S-hook, let's just say a largish S-hook that's about 8 inches long. You throw a nice sort of, bit of a rope twist in there and some scroll work on the ends, and around the area that I live, I could probably get $20 for it. If I really worked at it, marketed it right, displayed it nicely, I could probably get $20 for it. And so that's what I would charge. If it's not selling, and I keep making them and they just keep not selling, it means I can't sell it for $20, which means it's not worth $20. Now, if I try and discount it to half price, put it to $10, and it sells immediately, and I try it again, it sells, and I try it again, it sells, that means I can sell it for $10, which means it's worth $10 and I should charge $10 for it. Not because it took a certain amount of time to make, not because it took a certain amount of steel to make, simply because that's what it will sell for. And the purpose of me trying to make money as a blacksmith is to make money as a blacksmith. And if I'm not selling items, then I'm not making money at all. Let's just say the thing that I made, that S-hook, let's just say as a hypothetical, I'm very slow and it took me 3 hours to make that, which means I'm charging $3.30 an hour to make an S-hook. That's not worth my time, so don't make that item. Simple as that. Then again, I might take 4 hours to make a knife and I can sell it for $140 because I know it'll sell for that. And that's a good hourly rate. That's an excellent hourly rate. So as soon as you remove the thinking about specific hourly rates or what went into it and all that sort of thing, just find out what can you sell it for. And that's a very, very simple way to look at it. Now, some people overcharge for their work. That's very, very true. But are they selling the work? If they're not selling it, then they're not going to make money because they're not making any sales. If they are selling it, it means they can get away for charging that. And they're not overcharging for their work. You may just be undercharging because the demand is clearly there if they are selling the item repeatedly. Making one sale of an item at an exorbitant price is not a pattern. Something happening once is not a pattern. Something happening twice is not a pattern. I would say even selling something 3 times at a particular price is not a pattern, it's a coincidence. 4 times is a pattern. So next time you are thinking about what do I charge for this work, try thinking along the line, less along the lines of how many hours did I put into it, what's it made from, how much did the materials for it cost, how much fuel did I use while I made it, all of these other questions. Put them from your mind and say, what can I get for that item? What will people pay? And the good side effect of this is that people will pay what is fair. And so you charging what people will pay is inordinately fair. Now, if you're not happy with the amount that you could get for it, then don't make that item. Or get faster at it. Or find a way to make it cheaper if you insist on continuing to make it. But really, there's 2 things. There is the amount that you think it's worth and the amount that you can actually realistically sell it for. Now, if the amount that you think it's worth is much higher than, or in an uncomfortably higher than the amount that you can actually get for it, don't make that item. It's as simple as that. What it really comes down to is that pricing your work and business viability are 2 very separate things. And starting to factor in too many things like materials, fuel, hourly rates, etc. is talking about business viability, which is a very different discussion. Talking about pricing your work is one small factor of a business, because if you're going to talk about, to sort of give you an example of why I say that, if we're talking about factoring in the price of the material, let's start the discussion then of, could you be getting that material cheaper? Could you be using it in better ways? Could you be salvaging more material to lower your costs? And if you aren't doing any of these things to try and lower your material costs, are you now overcharging the customer because of your negligence? So business viability starts coming into all different things, such as reputation is a big one. Apple charges phenomenal amounts of money for their devices simply because they've got the reputation to be able to get away with it. And it comes down to the fact that they understand people will pay it, and so they charge it. If people didn't buy Apple products, you would see their prices coming down because there's actually not that much that goes into them that is deserving of the prices that they charge. Hugo Boss makes men's suits. Really, they're not that much different, and they're probably made in the same sweatshops as a lot cheaper brands. Fashion is one of those areas that it's just you stick a brand name on something that's cheaply made and all of a sudden you can charge 10 times as much for it. So business viability is a totally separate topic to pricing your work, and it's important to understand that. So different perspective from a very different field. Game theory is very different to what you would find in any other field of sales or marketing. So I thought I'd throw that in there. It's just it seems very simple. I could go into it a lot more detail, show you the math behind it, but this is a thing that works. This is a thing that I work with businesses to do, and it turn businesses around. Really, some of them very large businesses, and that's something that the evidence speaks for itself. You've got to change your perspective sometimes. There's a term that I like to call painted reality. And a painted reality is one that you have convinced yourself exists simply because other people have talked about it. You've heard it in the echo chamber around you. People keep saying, well, you've got to do this, or you've got to do that, or you've got to do that, you've got to charge for this, you've got to think about this. Do you? It could just be a painted reality. So try and see past that, simplify, remove all of the other factors. Obviously, you know, you're going to have expenditures if you're trying to run a business. That's normal. You're running a business. You've got to buy steel. You've got to buy charcoal. But you shouldn't be factoring those into the price of your items as much as, are you selling the right items for what they can be sold for, enough so that it will cover the expenses of your business? It turns it around a little bit and starts shifting your priority order. And sometimes it takes a bit of experimentation to actually find out whether or not the model that you're currently running in your business is viable or not. If it's not, shift things. It doesn't mean that it won't work or can't work, it just means that it currently is not working. So have a bit of a rearrange of things, maybe lower some prices of some items, maybe increase some prices of other items. You may be giving it away. You know, I've been known to do that before. I've been known to do the other as well, but you can only find out by learning. Sometimes I've had items sitting there that just don't sell, and then I realize that, oh, geez, I was overcharging for that. And then bringing it down to the price that I was actually selling them for, I wasn't comfortable with how much work went into it for me. So I just don't make those items anymore. And sometimes you want to make something that's completely wrong, you know, that you could never possibly get for it, what you put into it. But it's a lot of fun to make. Those items are fine, and you should have them on your list. I like to sort of call them, I have a list, an itinerary of the items that I make and sell in my shop, and I try and see what stock numbers are low and fill those up. But I also have a section of 5 items that are just for fun. I don't have to think about their actual value or anything like that. I just want to sell them. They're sort of exclusive. I put way too much work into them than I could possibly ever recoup back, but I personally enjoy making them. That's fine. They are not everything that I make. They are just, I have 5 slots on my inventory list for those types of items. I encourage you to do that as well, because let's face it, you're trying to love what you do and do what you love. I guess really the main thing is, just because blacksmithing is what you do for work doesn't mean it has to be a job. Don't forget to enjoy it. But, you know, I'll leave you guys to it for now. Different perspective, something else to think about. It's probably quite different to what you've heard in the past. And I definitely do encourage you to check out both the videos from Roy and Dan, which are going to be linked at the end of this video, because their perspectives are just as valid, and those two are both quite successful in what they do with their blacksmithing. So, you know, it works as well. Remember that it's not about that there is one thing that works and everything else is wrong. It's about finding what works for you and molding it until it is perfect. That takes time, that takes practice, that takes failing. And really, all failure is just a lesson. So keep that in mind, analyze what you're doing, take notes, see what you could have done better, and try again. It's just how it works, and then eventually you'll be doing it full time. And you know, like me, or like Roy, or like Dan, or like any of the other full-time blacksmiths that are doing this. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video, hope you learned something from it. I won't bother you with game theory again. You're lucky I didn't go into the math behind it, because it's a bit crazy. Don't forget to check out some of my other videos. Check out my Instagram, my Facebook, and my Etsy store, all of which are linked below. And I will see you guys in the next couple of videos, which are both going to be knife builds. So I know you guys like those. And I'll get back to this, try and warm up a bit now that the fire's at temperature. We'll catch you all later.